This playlist collects together and organizes the individual component modules, which together will comprise our lecture on the semantic twist and philosophical behaviorism. Our story arc for this lecture begins with revisiting referential opacity. We'll look at that Leibniz law argument again, discuss referential opacity. We'll look at two views about the nature of meaning, and then we'll talk about the semantic twist that manifests itself in philosophical behaviorism. We'll see that this semantic twist is an inflection point, sending philosophy down two interrelated and yet divergent paths. One of them, exemplified by Hempel, is guided by a philosophy of science approach to the philosophy of mind and results in Hempel's version of philosophical behaviorism. The other is guided by a philosophy of language approach to the philosophy of mind and is exemplified by Ryle's version of philosophical behaviorism. Both of these versions of philosophical behaviorism are met with what you might call the three horsemen of philosophical behaviorism. Putnam and Chisholm ride in and give three decisive criticisms of philosophical behaviorism, and we'll be reviewing those as well. So let's start with referential opacity. When thinking about referential opacity, we'll want to review that Leibniz law argument and then outline the strategy that gets employed once we start to make that semantic twist. That is, we're going to try and solve the problems of monistic physicalism through ontological reduction via semantic reduction, by reducing the concepts in our mental lexicon to the concepts in our physical lexicon. There'll be two ways in which we can accomplish this, corresponding to two different views about the nature and sources of meaning. So we'll review each of those. We'll look at the direct reference theory of meaning, and we'll look at descriptivist theories of reference. Both of these views correspond to one or the other of what Frege would call sense or reference. So let's go and look at the modern argument from Leibniz's law, the identity of indiscernibles argument that we trace back at least to Descartes. Premise 1. I can easily imagine my body being chopped up, placed into garbage bags, and scattered about town. Hence, my body is divisible. I cannot imagine my mind being chopped up. Hence, my mind is not divisible. If my mind was just my body, then by Leibniz's law, I should be able to imagine my mind being chopped up, since I can imagine my body being chopped up. That is, identical things must have all and only the same properties. If two things, x and y, are identical, then if x has some property, it has that property if and only if y also has that property. Conclusion: my mind is not my body. Now, the standard philosophical response to such Leibniz law arguments argues that the prima facie difference in properties between mind and body actually results from a referential opacity in the specification of the property. Specifically, the response locates the difficulty in the intentional context of imagine. It suggests that this is an inapt application of Leibniz law, given that in intentional context, it's often the case that co-referential terms cannot be substituted salva veritata. In other words, we have a failure of Leibniz's law to universally apply in these circumstances, precisely because people oftentimes do not recognize or understand that these co-referential terms in fact refer to the same things. Beginning with the logical empiricist, most philosophers seek to understand how monistic physicalism can accommodate mental phenomenon. Specifically, philosophers seek to advocate monistic physicalism by subsuming mental phenomenon within the physical, not through positing physicalistic theories providing mechanistic explanations of mental phenomenon directly, but through semantic reduction, intertheoretic reduction between the categories of the two different domains. This attempt to reconcile the ontological differences between, say, an oppositional substance dualist and the monistic physicalist through semantics can draw upon two different views regarding meaning. On the one hand, there's the direct reference theory, and this equates meaning with the referent of a term. Thus, our direct reference account would associate the meanings of theoretical categories with the, for instance, operationalizations that render them concrete, or with the categorizations that we use when using them in ordinary language. On the other hand, we have descriptivist theories that equate meaning of a term with the role that that term plays in an overall theoretical framework. It equates the reference of the term with the objects, entities, etc. that satisfy the relationships specified by the description or theoretical framework. So, for example, our theories then function like definite descriptions, such that anything that satisfies the description embedded in our theory thereby becomes the meaning of that theoretical term. Similarly, conventions about appropriate use within a language also would provide us with a set of relationships that could act as a definite description, picking out the reference of the particular terms within the world in virtue of the appropriateness of the application of the category to the term in the context of our language.